I was called by the RSPCA to attend a job where they thought there was 5 or 6 horses involved that were living in unsuitable conditions. And when I turned up, I realised straight away that the conditions that all the horses were in were totally unsuitable. So the horses in the outside paddock were up to their stomachs in what I would call slurry. There was foals in there as well that couldn't even move, and that environment was shocking. Whilst I was talking with the owner and with the RSPCA, in the corner of my eye I noticed something moving quite a distance away from us. So I then got the attention of the inspector. We left the scene, and when we left the scene I said to them, there's more horses there on site. So when we came back, then the inspector asked if we could go and have a look at the other barns, and that's when then the owner actually became quite agitated. So we had to involve other agencies, the police, and more backup from other RSPCA inspectors. We went down to these other sheds, and in the sheds we ended up finding over 35 horses that were in appalling conditions. The stables were nailed shut, the doors hadn't even been opened for years. There was 2 ponies that the feces was that high in the stable that their withers were actually touching the roof. They were unable to lift their head and neck up. And there was just dark stables. There was 5 Shetlands in one stable, and we had to dig them out to get them out of the stable. I actually had to crawl on my hands and knees into the stable to get them out. There were some others that were so scared about coming out because they'd never left the stable, so we had to entice them out. And just totally, I was so shocked. It was the worst thing that I'd seen, and the vets had actually said that it was the worst case that they'd ever dealt with. The horses were examined on site by the vets. They were unable to, to move in their environment. They didn't have the correct food. They were suffering from pain. Their feet were appalling. They had sores, they had lice. A lot of the horses had to have pain relief given before they were allowed to move because of the sheer length of their feet, and because they also had no muscle to be able to move and so on. So they were checked before they could be transported off-site. So the horses then were removed from the site. They were then taken to a holding yard where they were allowed to move in a big barn in their set groups, because some of the horses, some of the Shetlands for instance, were in a group of 5. They stayed in their group. There was the 2 that were together in the stable that couldn't lift their head and neck. They stayed together, and then they were inspected then by the vets, and a plan was put in place as to what was going to happen with feet and any injuries and so on that they had. The farrier was present as well, and literally work started the next day. So the owner of these horses was prosecuted under the Animal Welfare Act and given a lifetime ban on keeping any equines. His partner was also given a 10-year ban on keeping equines. So the horses were shared amongst the charities, but that's not the end of the story. When we attended the job with the 40 horses on the allotment, we knew that there was 5 other horses elsewhere, and we've been keeping a close eye on them. And it came to our attention that these horses weren't being attended. So myself and the RSPCA inspector worked very closely with the daughter and realised that she was having trouble with these horses. These horses hadn't been handled. They were in a field. They've had no contact apart from maybe some hay put over a gate occasionally. So we talked and worked with her, and you know, she did come to realise that she actually wasn't coping, and signed the horses over to World Horse Welfare. So Margaret was the leader, and but would be the first one to use her natural instincts of flight and make the rest of them go. But to see her now, it's great. This is great because she was so nervous. She didn't want us to touch her or anything. So this makes your job all worthwhile. So Ruth was another one of the ponies that you couldn't touch or even stand near. So it was great. So hopefully these horses will go on or to be either companions or to be ridden. They are young, so they have got a good future ahead of them.